Hello! It's been a long time, but I'm still here. I've been super busy, but I'm here showing my face again because I have something really cool to share with you today. A follower of my YouTube, blog, what have you, was moving and needed to downsize and sent me some of the antique clothing that she had collected. So thank you. I am finally unboxing these on video, and I can't wait to share and show you what's inside. Let's take a look at how much goodness this is. Came in a different box, but I needed to pirate that box for another use. So I'm gonna go through and unwrap these and share while I do so that you can share with me. And maybe in future, we'll go back and look at each thing in depth. So let's go. Okay, I'm just gonna grab the first one then. I saw a preview, but I'm not exactly sure of what all is in here, so this is super exciting for me. I don't usually show my face the whole time, but logistically, I just couldn't manage to do a video like that today. So these are all wrapped so beautifully and with such great care. This one is a beautiful, looks like a net dress, probably teens, but we'll see as we get into it. Oh, before I start, people always say, why aren't you wearing gloves? There is kind of an argument between whether you should or whether you shouldn't. I choose not to, and I'll tell you why. Because when you're wearing gloves, you can't feel with your fingertips. And I think it's really important with antique textiles that I own, or I'm gifted, to be able to feel the fabric so I don't tear anything. So some people in museums choose to wear gloves, some people choose not to wear gloves. I wash my hands and I don't, so that's why. Okay, so let's get back to it. Oh, this is a two-piece dress. Okay, so I cleaned my table also, don't worry. And it is a beautiful teens dress. Oh, this is so lovely. So here is the beautiful bodice. It's got buttons up the front. It's got lace border on the sides. It's so cute. So this looks like it was probably homemade, and you get into it at the side front here. You can see other videos of how to get in and out of teens garments on my channel. Oh, there we go. So it's just a really nice, oh, a lot of it's hand sewn actually. That's interesting. So it's just a really simple front buttoning blouse, and then this vestie wraps over the front, and then the lace goes on top. It's so very sweet. I would guess maybe 1914-ish. And here's the skirt with darling rows of tucked shirring. That was such a thing to do. These are little, like a pin tuck almost. Like it looks like about 1/8 on the double, and then they would pull it in to gather it, so you'd get this really fun, like ripply tucked effect. And then the border of the fabric is at the hem, and it's lined, which is unusual. It's lined in this really great dobby weave cotton, they call it now. I'm not sure what they would call it in the period. It's D-O-B-B-Y. Very lovely sheer cotton fabric. So a lot of times these net ones would be unlined, and the reason why was so that you would wear a princess slip or undergarments underneath, and then you didn't have to launder or use extra fabric. But this particular example has the same fabric as the underblouse and then underneath the skirt, which is great. Oh, this is lovely. Oh, how beautiful. I love cotton net dresses, and this is another one. And it's got the embroidered net, which is a particular favorite. Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, and it has a lovely sash. Beautiful. I'm not sure if this is new made or from the period. Oh, you know what's really great about this one? Before I even unravel it, let's see if you can see this. It was two-tone. So there's roses, and then the roses would have been pink. And then there's a lovely scalloped border that also would have been a very pale pink. That must have been so stunning when it was new, and it's probably just slightly faded because of the age. Oh, this is so pretty. Okay. Oh, it's so lovely. And it's got hand-done buttons. Okay, this is probably also 1914-ish. It's got a great pointed collar. Oh, it's so pretty. And look at the back. Look at the way that the scallops are up at the shoulder. Isn't that just so pretty? Very, very delicate. And all of these buttons are beautifully hand done. They look like crochet to me. And then let's see if I can get a close-up of this lace. So you can see the two-tone, that it's pink and then white also. And it's so, so soft. Today they call this bobinette, but the original stuff was even finer than what you can get today. And it's just so cleverly done. It's got a little crossover, and then underneath it snaps up the front here. And then, like a lot of teens things, the skirt closes off to the side. So maybe we can do a more in-depth one about this dress at a future time. And look at the beautiful hem. It's just so pretty. I am honored to be able to add this beauty to the study collection. Okay, I'm going to carefully fold her back up and then we'll move to the next dress. Okay, what's next? Feels like a bodice. Let's see. Oh, there's two. Oh, this is pretty. It's very hard to tell. Excuse my squeaky chair. The light is not so good, but this is a beautiful silk, and it's got a stripe that's a gray, a like royal blue, and a lavender. And it's beautifully soft. So let's see. Oh, look at the lining. My goodness, isn't that fun? Oh, this is so beautiful. I love the unexpected stripes. That is so fun. And the waist tape has a red band on the top and the bottom. That is just so fun. This one is handmade for sure, homemade. The raw edges are overcast on the inside, which means they just whip around the outside that connected the two layers together to keep it from unraveling like you would serge today. And unusually there's a little side dart on the inside, so whoever made this needed extra room across the bust. You don't usually see side darts in Edwardian unless it's specific to the wearer. And I do think this is Edwardian. The cuffs, it makes it look around like 1908-ish, 7, 8, pre-Titanic era. Big hooks and eyes with little, they're a little bit rusty, but very big hooks and eyes. And that is super fun. So let me see if I can get this closed up. Oh, and they've got such beautiful tiny buttons. And this has purple behind it, which is really lovely. And a beautiful lace. I don't know what type of lace this is. I mean, people are gonna say probably that it's a morning one because it's black and purple. And I'm not sure. I think that mourning was starting to phase out. It was still a thing, but it wasn't nearly as prevalent as the Victorian era. Like, you know, all the way through the 1920s, people wore mourning, and even into the 1930s in some areas, like I think in France maybe, correct me if I'm wrong. But in America, it started phasing out, so people would not wear mourning as long. Of course, in the Victorian era, they had phases of mourning when you could add things like lavender, which is why when we see black and lavender, we think, oh, it's mourning, but maybe it's just fashion. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think. But when it's closed up, it's got like this. Oh, we've got a reflection. How unusual. So this lace is a really clever way to use just a little bit of lace that you might have. And I think people say this is Chantilly, but I am not a lace expert. I'm probably wrong, so don't quote me on that. But interestingly, there's these very tiny, beautiful buttons. and they're glass. They're like a royal blue color, and then there's a little gold rim. They're very, very pretty. Usually when I see these little buttons, I think of them as 1920s, but so it's really great to see them on an earlier blouse. It's so soft. Like the silk is so soft and it feels strong. It doesn't feel like it's shattering at all. And the reason I say it's about 7 or 8 is these interesting cuffs. So in 08, you would have these cuffs that would hit here or here with a fitted cuff and then a puff. And that's very like on trend to have it like this. It might be slightly earlier because look at the gathering is mostly to the outside of the arm, and in the 1908 it was sort of gathered all the way around. But it's got this great trimming also. There we go. Really interesting little trim. It's like a, I think they would do, it's called a silk knit. I just saw this in a magazine I was reading last night actually. A silk knit trim, and then it's hand tacked to place at intervals to make it have this great scalloped effect. And then the back has very Edwardian tucks on either side. Very hard to see because it's dark, but it's really, really beautiful and very soft. Unusual to see one in that's not shattering, and it's such a soft, soft silk too. A beautiful big collar. I just love it. Okay, another one. This also feels like bodice. Let's see. It is. Oh, it's beautiful. You have exceptional taste. Let's see. Oh gosh, it's beautiful. So this is a fun one because this, oh my gosh, it has the collar. You guys, the collar. Oh my gosh. This is so good. This is like 1914. I can't even, it's just so good. It's so unusual to see them with the wire that still exists in them. How thrilling. So the whole outside edge of this collar is wired, which is really interesting because I've seen like the wires that would attach at the neck and then go up in like spokes. But this is actually wired all the way around the outside edge, which is fascinating to me. I don't know that I've ever actually come across one that's done like this, but it makes so much sense. It's a flat wire when you feel it inside, so it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's a flat, very pliable, like still to this day, very pliable wire that holds it up so that it has this fabulous shape. And it goes all around the outside and it looks like it's tacked on the inside, right where it joins here. And then we see this lovely lace and tiny, beautiful buttons. It's so perfect. I just adore this. And you know what's really beautiful is the fabric. This fabric. Can you see that? It's this gorgeous botanical fabric. It's just lovely. And you know, a lot of time black is really overlooked, but it shouldn't be because they did so many interesting things with the black and the way that they combined textures. So for this one, for example, it's got like this flat taffeta here at the front and this band that goes around that's the flat black. But on the sides and on the back, it's this gorgeous botanical fabric. And then it's got these great cuffs, and the cuffs are lined with the same silk. I love it. It's just so good. It's these little details that really make things so interesting to me. And then being, you know, the teens, it's hidden closures, so the inside is where you get the side front. I really wonder what the skirt looked like. I bet it was a hobble skirt with a tier on top, like a, you know, a tier and then a hobble skirt. I bet you something like that. And I love the mustard color. The mustard color is so perfect with the black. Ah, and now that I can see it up close, there are little bones at the back of the neck. Look, 1, 2, 3, and wired. So that collar was not going anywhere. They were going to make sure that this wired collar was going to stay up. And then on the inside, this is really interesting too. The inside is the polished cotton that you see with a lot of Victorian ones, which makes me wonder if this was repurposed, because you do still see this, but not as much as you do with earlier Victorian, like 1890s, and then this is a good 20 years later almost, you know? So yeah, that's really interesting. And the fabric reads earlier too, so I wonder if this was repurposed from like a bustle dress and they used the lining. They could have used part of the skirt lining too, because a lot of times they would not use the fashion fabric on the underskirt except for where it showed, so there would have been a lot of this brown polished cotton that could be used. Of course, the inside cut looks totally period. It's got really tiny little tucks. This was a very slender woman. Yeah, it's great. It's just great. And look at the, we worry so much about how things are finished, but look at this. They're like, we're gonna put buttons on, but we're not gonna actually bother to disconnect our thread for each button. We're just gonna do 1, 2, 3, all the way down with a line of thread. And the buttons are velvet. So another fantastic texture. Lace, velvet, plain taffeta, brocade, or jacquard brocade, I'm not sure which one. It's just perfect. It's beautiful. Really, really, really fantastic. Okay, what's next? Okay, this is a big one. It's hefty. I wonder what it is. It feels like beading. Let's find out. Not beading. It is a fabulous collar, and this looks like vintage 40s. So let's find out. Let's do the collar first. Oh gosh, it's so pretty. Now, I don't know when this is from, but I would guess it's Victorian because it reads like it would go on 1860s, 70s, but they still did this well into the Victorian or Edwardian era, so it could be Edwardian too. When are you from? But fascinatingly, it has this really, I've got to be careful because it's shattering, but it's got this really great, very sheer netting, and then on top it's appliqued with the taffeta, and then on top of that is a cording. And this type of work could be done on it's machine done for sure. There were machines that would do cording. So it's just really fantastic use of texture. Can you imagine how long it would take to cut and do this, even with machine? Interestingly, the edges are not hemmed on the edge of the taffeta. It's just left raw, but their fabrics were so tightly woven back then. You can see the netting covers the whole entire back of it. See if I can get not as much of a glare in the camera. There we go. So this is all worked on a background that's net. I'm sorry, I'm still getting little dots. It must be from my light. I don't usually use light, but it's unusually rainy in Southern California this year, so I had to pull my lights out. But you can see that it's worked on the net. So the net is cut to shape, I would assume, or bigger than. And then it looks like the taffeta was applied on top. And it is shattering a bit, but isn't it gorgeous? This design is just fantastic. It's so architectural. And I mean, it could be Victorian, it could be early Edwardian. I wouldn't think it would be any later than, say, like 1908-ish. But it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. And a survivor. I wonder what it was on originally. Beautiful. All right. Let's see what this vintage thing is. This feels like a great gabardine. And a lovely color. It's a lavender. Oh, how cute is this? Isn't that cute? So a little bit of a fast forward in time, and this is probably 48 to 52-ish, I would guess. fantastic gabardine, and it's cut with this all-in-one sleeve, which places it post-war. Really cute and fun buttons. Oh, that is so interesting. So it looks really weird for me to be doing this with the pockets, but the inside has Hymo, which is hair canvas. You can feel it. There's a hair canvas in here, which would give you body to that. Not in the collar, but in the front of the jacket, or sorry, it's a dress, the front of the dress, and these pockets to make them stand out. And I love the way that there's double buttons in the front. Excuse my squeaky chair. Double buttons all the way down. That's very fun. And then great pockets here. And these are also with Hymo. So when it was new, I bet that these stood out very prominently at the hips and at the bust, which kind of goes with that post-war hourglass shape, doesn't it? And fabulous cuffs. It's just darling. And it was made by Abby Kent of New York. Very cute. Late 40s, early 50s, for sure. Maybe like very, very, very late 40s. Certainly not any later than probably 55-ish. That is so cute. All right, what's next? Okay, we've reached the last bag. What an amazing treasure chest this has been to open. Pretty. Okay, this is a lingerie dress, which is super fun. They call them wash dresses or lingerie dress. And when I mentioned before that a lot of things were unlined, this is one of the unlined dresses, which you would wear your undergarments would be visible underneath, which is why they got so lacy and frilly, because you could see them underneath. All right, this is a fabulous fabric. The fabric has a weave of a stripe, so it mimics the look of Pintex, but it's not Pintex. It's actually woven three-dimensional bands that are inside of the fabric, or it could be, it's like a cording that was inserted into the weave. I don't know what this is called. If you know, please tell me, because it's really, really neat. So, get my light. Oh, how cute. So it wraps. That is just so fun. So this is definitely 1910s. It could, gosh, it's hard to place because it's got later teen styling. Fabulous bell sleeves, which could have actually been adapted later. It might have started earlier, and then they went and adapted it to have more of the getting into the early 20s style sleeve. So these side panels were a thing from, oh gosh, 1915-ish. No, probably even a little earlier. The side panels on the skirt. And then all the way through the early 1920s. What I love about the skirt is the stripe of the fabric is cut going this way on the panels and this way on the skirt, which makes it super interesting. It's got a great chemical lace. This would be a machine-made lace. And it's a great way to just use a little bit, isn't it? To just decorate the side panels. And of course you want to see the top. The top has a great crossover design. They did this a lot with maternity, but I don't think this is maternity at all. I think this is, oh, is it tacked there? I'm sorry, I can't open it all the way up. Maybe they didn't back then either. Maybe that they tacked it down. But it is definitely not maternity because inside we've got this very stable waistband. And interestingly, the waistband is boned all the way around. Now, I've mentioned this before. Gosh, even in Facebook groups, and you know how Facebook groups are. I'm not on Facebook very much right now, actually, so don't look for me there because I'm not really on there very much right now. But the waistbands inside could be boned, and a lot of times people say, no, they weren't, they were Petersham. No, they were both. Like everything in the teens, they did whatever they wanted to make things work. So you'll see this throughout fashion history. From modern ideals, we want to have a set of rules. We want to have it where this is how you do this and this is how you do this. And it wasn't like that. with history. They did that whatever they needed to do to get the job done. So interestingly, this is not a Petersham inside. This is not a grosgrain inside, which a grosgrain has a flat band woven at top and bottom, and a Petersham goes like this, which means that it curves more. And you'll see both of those things used as waistbands, most often Petersham. But this one is not either of those things. This one is actually just cut of cotton fabric. I'm unbuttoning, that's why I'm chatting. This is just made of cotton fabric. And they didn't even really care about grain line, it looks like. You know what it reminds me of is a 1950s girdle, but it's not, obviously. There you go. You'll see the center. The center shows where the raised waistline would hit. So that's about 1.5 inches. So an 1.5 inches raised waist. And then to keep it very secure, they have all this boning, which is unusual to find so much boning on such a small garment. But they really wanted to make sure nothing moved. So this is why it was not maternity, because this is a very stable waistband with no fluctuation. And of course, because it's this period, it closes its center front. And then to make the skirt go off center, they have a band finished with snaps that then laps over to the side. Snaps. You'll see this in some of my reproduction sewing patterns of the period. The funny thing about teens clothing, like I've said before, is that it looks so modern from our standpoint. Like we're used to looking at bustle dresses or, 18th century or whatever, and they look so different than modern clothes, but teens clothing looks so close to modern clothing that it really throws you for a loop when you start looking at how to put the darn thing together, because most of the time it didn't fasten up the back or the side or whatever. Once you get into the 1930s, 40s, things got a lot more standardized, but clothing got a lot more simple. So this is another one that's very complicated. I actually think that 19 teens are some of the most complicated garments to sew. I've sewn all the way from 18th century until today, and I will tell you every time the teens ones are the most complicated. And it's just because there were so many weird fastenings, and the patterns wouldn't tell you, of course, so you had to kind of look at originals, which is why I'm very thankful that these have come into my hands, because now I can show you more period examples or look in period sewing books for more information about how things closed. And like I said, there were just a lot of times just no rules. They just were like, I want to make this dress, and then they would just make it how they thought it should be made. So don't be afraid to do that too when you get to making stuff. If you want to make it, make a mock-up for sure, especially of early patterns because they're wonky. But then you have freedom to make things how you want, because that's what they would have done back then. What I find really cute about this particular dress is that it looks like it's a cross and then a tie. But being from the 19 teens or early 20s, they're like, we're gonna have a crossover dress with a tie, but it's not gonna be the crossover that ties. We're gonna cut separate ties and attach those. So the front, it looks like, at first glance, I thought, oh cool, it wraps and then ties. No, it doesn't. It wraps and snaps, and then you have ties attached, which is very, very, very fun. And there's a great collar attached, which probably was done separately because they've done a beautiful little hand embroidery. And you would get these little motifs and ideas for updating garments in magazines like the Modern Priscilla, where they'd say, oh, to update your dress, just make this little collar and add a simple little bit of hand sewing to really elevate your garment. Okay, we have reached the end. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for the generous gift. And I really appreciate it. I hope that those who follow my channel have gotten a kick out of seeing this and hearing me ramble about antique clothing, which I love to do. So once I can actually set up my camera, I'm glad to share these beautiful old things with you. And I'm very honored for the opportunity to be able to do so. So thank you for the gift. And I hope that many people see it as a gift, because now they also get to see how gorgeous antique garments are and how complicated and unusual they were. Because as you could see with all of them, there was no standard other than wonky closures. This one's lined in stripes, and this one's not lined, and this one's lined in cotton. This one has an inside waistband that's woven. This one has an inside waistband that's pieced with weird boning. Like, everything went. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that you can use these in your own sewing to come up with ideas. Otherwise, use them for dating to help you figure out how antique garments went together. And you can find more videos on my channel about original antiques and how to sew reproduction sewing patterns. So thanks everybody, and see you next time.